All right, this meeting will come to order. Okay, we have a forum this evening. A couple things I wanted to mention before we begin with our deliberations tonight. This is only a one-topic meeting. It's so the school committee can reconsider, or the school building committee can reconsider the geothermal system or ground source heat pumps, as it's also known. So there's just a couple things I want to point out. The committee's been really lenient in terms of public participation, and we want to continue to encourage that. Tonight we need to get to the point. We need to stick with parliamentary procedures as they are. So I want to make the audience known. I want to make it known to the audience that this is a public meeting. It's not a meeting of the public. There's a sharp distinction there in that the school building committee owns the meeting. So we're going to keep it to that tone tonight. That means that we're only going to allow for maybe 10 or 15 minutes of audience or public comment this evening. It will be such that you make comments only to the co-chairs of the committee. There's no questions. There's no questions of the school building committee. There's no questions of Skanska, TRA, or BALA when they make their presentation. When the school building committee then moves into making a motion and deliberations, they can question each other. Well, they can't question each other. You can make comments. But if they have questions for our architect and OPM, they can. So is everyone clear on that? All right. Is anyone else recording this meeting other than the gentleman right here? If you are, please disclose that. Okay, because that's not lawful. With that noted, how many people would like to address the school building committee this evening? So I'm seeing about maybe 8 hands. All right. So how many people, I want to make sure this is fair, how many people are going to be addressing the school building committee in favor of geothermal? All right, how many are going to be opposed? All right, so why don't we start? You have about a minute each to talk, and that's it. All right? So who wants to be the first up? Mr. Boyle. And please state who you are,
sure,
and where you're from for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm John Boyle, member of the Dalton Select Board. And the primary reason I'm here this evening is because through extrapolation, I believe this meeting was called because of the statements made at a Dalton Select Board meeting 2 weeks ago. And then turned into a front page.
John, this meeting was called because this committee reconsidered a decision they made last year.
Thank you for the correction, Mr. Chairman. Right. And because of the comments, and they were on the front page of the Eagle, it even prompted a letter to the editor, which I have here, by a local activist who stated that the Dalton Select Board took the position that this may be a tipping point and cause the overall project to fail monetarily. That simply isn't true. I'm hopeful for a letter of correction to the Berkshire Eagle. I doubtful if that'll happen. But only one member of the Select Board suggested in his enthusiasm and somewhat surprised that this would be an additional cost and could tip the balance of an election. It wasn't the Select Board's position. It was a position of one member. So that was totally misrepresented by our local activist, Mr. Rose, who's seated right there. I expect an apology soon, Mr. Rose. But there was many other misinformations in that letter to the editor about the Dalton Select Board. And in a sense, I'm here to defend the Select Board. But I'm not going to belabor the point. We have important business to get to. Our distinguished member and chairman, John Bartels, will certainly represent our position thoroughly and ably. I understand that this geothermal process was voted on December 15th when our local member from Dalton, the representative of the biggest town in the district, was unable to attend due to a family emergency or issues. So I thought it was disrespectful to Dalton and that board member that he couldn't attend. Thereby, he was unable to communicate to the rest of the board the total issue at hand. Because, to be frank, the geothermal consideration was new to us. We are of the mind that, or I am of the mind, this is one of the issues that should have been considered at the outset of this process, not at the end, and not purport a $74 million price tag and then tag $2 million on top of it. And the operative word with that was at least $2 million.
Okay,
So
John,
it could be more.
to wrap it up, you done?
Okay? The Dalton Select Board has definitely an open mind. We look forward to cooperating with you, and we have many questions about the process, and I hope we have a full and frank discussion. I know the remaining body has many questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for future reference, try to stick to the topic, not the people. So, just want to make that note. Mr. Shannon?
My name is Jared Shannon. I'm a resident of Dalton. I'm also a teacher here at Wacona. I'm also the athletic director here at Wacona, and I've attended dozens of meetings on this subject. I'm here to represent the Wacona families for New Wacona, an advocacy group. And we are in favor, 100% favor of a new school. We have some significant concerns about the adding of geothermal to this project. We think that it is a very difficult political decision that this committee has made, because we don't have the time to properly educate the public on what geothermal is, what the benefits are, in the 12 weeks we have between now and the vote. So our recommendation is to pull geothermal out of the project, because at the end of the day, the charge is to build a new school, and the education of our kids has to come first. So we are unanimously, our advocacy group is unanimously in favor of pulling geothermal out so that we can properly advocate for this building and have a passing vote on April 6th. Our primary concern is that this decision has put so many people on the fence, has added a burden of $2 million, and we don't have the time to properly educate and advocate to pull enough people back to the side to pass this building before April 6th. And I'd strongly urge this committee to reconsider that decision, because what we don't want to see is a building plan go through that is not going to pass on April 6th, because the consequences of that are severe. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Stu Besnoff from Windsor. I appreciate hearing from the select board member to clarify some things. I expect the building committee will vote based on facts, not on rumors. It's unfortunate that some of our neighbors made up opinions without having all the information. I understand that all of the financial information will be in next month, that we don't even have all the information right now. Concerning the operation of heat pumps, there have been many examples gathered, and there's a number of emails that were floated around with other schools and other buildings. It's not an experimental or new technology. As an example, although they're slightly different, heat pumps at the Windsor Town Office have been operating for a month. They use air as a source, not the ground temperature. And even when it's 0 degrees out, Bob and I walked in and it was 68 degrees inside the town office. The ground source heat pumps will never have that low a temperature as a source. They're going to be so much more efficient. The idea that we have until April 6th to educate people who made up opinions with false information or guessing or rumors, I think that's adequate time. I think we should do a good job getting people educated on the technology and the benefits of the heat pumps. I also believe that the 80-year payback thing that was quoted in the newspaper is not based on good information. I believe when the utility savings and the alternative energy certificates...
Mr. Besnoff, could you wrap up, please?
Okay, when everything's factored in, I think it'll be much better. And we could work together to secure a green community grant. That's something that should be explored, not by individuals here, but from the school building committee, to explore that with Department of Energy Resources, and there's people here who could work together with you on that.
Okay, thank you. Next person.
Good evening, Joe Diver, 51 Audrey Drive, Dalton, Massachusetts. A couple of reasons why I should vote this down. One is poor communication to the town. You talked about lead silver, you voted that in October. There was no discussion about geothermal. until the January newsletter that came out, which said you were considering geothermal, although you took a full vote to vote in at least $2 million. The additional fact is, looking at some research, East Hampton voted it down because their payback was 32 to 48 years after full analysis, with no payback, and it was about a $2 million spend. This $2 million spend that you're asking for is direct to the town, and you had a 30% turnout vote according to the town clerk that I talked to this afternoon. You have to encourage much more than 30% to get the vote through. You're adding risk to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one other comment. You may also receive a petition tonight from some folks that are in favor of it. I filed a formal complaint. Co-chairman Tom has a copy of that, so I think you weigh that as you look at the petitions.
Okay. Next. Anyone else?
Hi, Henry Rose, Dalton. Well, I do regret that that the thought of geothermal or heat pumps wasn't part of the discussion right from the beginning. But I didn't know there was no discussion, and I think that our discussion happened just in time. So we're talking about the guts of the building. We're talking about something that can't easily be changed later on. And I think we should do this thing right. So the petition referred to, that was me and my wife taking about 3 hours going around and talking to random people at the transfer station, the CRA, and basically hitting every house in our neighborhood. And in about 3 hours, we had no trouble in getting 63 signatures saying, yes, they're in favor. And I'd like to show you this. We had no trouble. About 3/4 of people said yes.
Ms.
Yes,
Brummeyer,
would you like
for
to?
the record.
About 3/4 of people said yes to this. And I've done a lot of campaigning in my years, and I'd have to say this was one of the easiest gets from people. People were very receptive. And those that didn't want to sign, many of them were just saying they didn't want to talk at all, as some people are. So the community I saw, and it's a fairly random sampling, they were pretty much in favor. One of the people who signed it was an employee of Crane. And he said at Crane they would say, build it right in the beginning. And that's what I want to say to the committee. Lead silver. I looked on the internet. There's like regular leads, there's leads silver, there's leads gold, there's leads platinum, and this year there's going to be leads 4.1. Let's not congratulate ourselves that lead silver is like getting a second place in the Olympics. It's not. It's an old standard. It's something, but it's not really what we should be gunning for. The time for the geothermal payback.
Okay, could you please wrap up?
We called around, we got maybe 15 years. I don't know where the 80 years came from. I was asked by somebody if I would move here if we didn't have a new school, and I said, no, I probably wouldn't, but I'm not sure I can vote for the project unless it has a state-of-the-art heating and cooling system. And I'm concerned about the health, I'm concerned about the safety, and I am also concerned about the economics. And the economics do need to be looked at vigorously because they do matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Someone in the back was raising their hand.
So I'm curious, how much extra is this geothermal system going to cost us?
Well, there's no questions tonight, but it was estimated to be between 1.7 and $2 million.
So if the total project is $80 million and the state payback is $35 million, then that means of the remaining $45 million, this is approximately a 4.5% add. Is that correct?
If you say so.
Okay.
Like I said, you may not have been here at the beginning of the meeting, but I basically said there's no questions from the audience to the school building committee or to WRHS Geothermal. They may go over some of those numbers in a few minutes,
Okay.
so.
All right.
Rose?
Cheryl? Okay. Cheryl Rose. I prepared some thoughts because obviously I've been coming and talking to you guys a lot, and I realize this has become a really emotional issue. And I just want, so I'll try to talk really fast, not a lot. We're here talking about a new school because we all want to give the children of our communities the best educational opportunity we can. And I believe that how this school is built will say a lot about the adults making the decisions and what they value. To me, a child's education is about more than what the school looks like. Of course, it's important to have the basics of the physical plant to do the job, a safe building, enough chairs, desks, etc., science labs, the basics. It's also about attracting and retaining good teachers, having enough of them to have reasonable class sizes, and not insignificantly, a child's education is also about the behaviors we model, how we communicate, how we treat each other and our world, and what values inform our decisions. I've heard varying estimates of what the school may cost the average taxpayer in Dalton. It seems to be somewhere around maybe $500 a year. We've also heard in these meetings it could be an additional $35 a year to choose a geothermal ground source heating and cooling system versus a gas-fired system. The geothermal has the added advantages that the whole building would also have air conditioning. The major investment in the system, as in the part outside, would last the lifetime of the building. And most importantly, the geothermal system would not require burning fossil fuels, could eventually be running on 100% clean energy, and that's good for our kids. Investment in a gas-fired boiler, on the other hand, would be a long-term commitment to burning fossil fuel, which is not so good for our kids. I believe 98% of scientists when they tell us that burning natural gas is contributing to the rise in asthma and other childhood respiratory illnesses. And I believe them when they tell us we must stop burning fossil fuel if we want to hand our children a livable planet. It may not be convenient or even comfortable for some people to accept that we've been doing for many years, what we've been doing is actually hurting us, and that we have to change the way we do some things. But that doesn't change the facts. If the concern is about an additional $35, I would hope the building committee per, family, whatever, it's the 2 million. I hope you'd look to cut landscaping or other superficial things. So that to the folks who can afford the additional $35 but have voiced opposition to paying it, I really can't believe you don't think doing our part in protecting the air our kids breathe, and for that matter, the quality environment they live in, is worth $35. And I hope that with more education about why the decision was made to support geothermal, you'll change your minds. And for those who truly can't afford it, I would guess that they probably can't afford the $500 either, and that is a whole other problem that we definitely have to deal with. This is my last sentence. If we do decide as communities to spend approximately $40 million, there's no question that geothermal is the right system to put in at the beginning. The school building committee made a smart decision and a good decision to go with geothermal when you did, and I hope you'll stick with your decision.
In the back?
I'm Sarah DeFazio. I live at 90 Pine Street in Dalton, and I'm speaking as both a parent of 3 children in our district and also as a district employee. I teach elementary school. And I can tell you that, as Mrs. Rose was saying, I am also very concerned about our children and their future. I think that of utmost importance right now is that they get a new school. And I think that that takes precedent over a special interest group that might have been squeaky at some of the meetings. I think that the amount of pushback that I have heard as a community member as soon as this geothermal came into play is extraordinary. And I think that if you include this in the new plan, you are putting a new school in jeopardy. And I think that that trumps the need for geothermal.
Okay, thank you. Someone else in the back?
I second that.
I thought I saw another hand back there.
Hi, Richard Hall, 164 Green Ridge Drive. My point is, there's 2 points. One is, today we had 52 degrees and 3 inches of rain. And if you look out the windows now, it is snowing. So if we don't think climate change is here, maybe we need to rethink that. Second real quick point is that there was a vote at the last session, after discussion, after a presentation, and majority of the votes voted in favour of this. So what's it saying to our children if we now go back on votes that we make on things? That was my only 2 comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In the front row here. I think Mary.
I just have a few things, and I'm going to read them because as a member of the class of 63, I don't trust my memory. I think that a new construction using fossil fuel at this stage of world environmental crisis is pretty much indefensible. The future impact of cost for fuel, the fracking impact, pollution, global warming, and the upcoming carbon taxes must be taken into account. Opponents of geothermal don't address the inherent ongoing costs of fossil fuel. On a project likely to cost $75 million, geothermal will only add a few dollars to the average tax bill. It's a one-time investment which grants us fuel autonomy. Many of us will not vote for a project that includes fossil fuel at the outset, and we encourage the building committee to do what's right for the project, the environment, the kids, future generations, and vote yes again.
Thank you. With that,
Sarah Pernick, 165 High Street. What I want to say is I think the most important thing is a new school. So I'm somewhat taken back and surprised when I hear people say they'll vote no if it doesn't have geothermal, because a no vote means that we're not going to get the needed funds from the state. And then we're going to go back to the drawing board, and the current state of the school is going to remain the same, and I don't think that we're going to have the funds to fix it. So I agree with geothermal. I think it's a great idea. I think it's wonderful. We should have it. I wouldn't disagree on any of the environmental arguments being made. My concern is that people make decisions based on tax increases. So although it's only a little bit per household based on just the geothermal, I think it does put at risk the ability for the school to get a yes vote.
thank you. One more.
Good evening. My name is Mary Stuckland, 49 Robinson Road, Hinsdale. I also went around for 4 hours this last Saturday to talk to strangers that I did not know, both at the Hinsdale transfer station and in a few neighborhoods in Dalton. I also have signatures from Beckett, 49 signatures. Actually, most of them are signatures, some of them are digital. Would you like those papers?
Yes, please.
To reiterate what Mr. Rose had said, again, random sampling, I didn't know many of these people. Many of the people who go to the transfer station are not my age, so they were pretty perplexed while I was standing out there in the cold. I will say this. I had a lot of really good conversations with a lot of very different people from diverse backgrounds, people who have eco-friendly tendencies, to people who did not even hear that there was a new high school being proposed. One of my main points I want to make to this board is that there is a larger problem in the community that is it's much larger than geothermal. A lot of people think that there is a $0 option. They think that there is a do nothing, no impact to them option. That is, and some people my age that I did talk to on social media, they didn't know that there was a new school building committee. I had to do a lot of education about the renovation versus rebuilding, more so than I had to do about the geothermal. When it comes to geothermal, I do want to mention that in Great Barrington, they rebuilt their elementary and their middle school 14 years ago. And they built those on geothermal systems. And they have 64 wells. And they've had to replace, I think, 6 of the, not the wells themselves, but the systems that are above ground since. So 6 out of 64, that's not a lot of maintenance. And that's in the middle school building itself. I had personally worked there for 2 years at a middle school science teacher, and it was a very comfortable building to teach in. We had air conditioning and heating. The kids did not have to worry about the temperature or being comfortable when they were
Okay, Mary, could you wrap up,
attempting.
please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
I think that in about 10 years' time, maybe 15, maybe in 2050, 30 years' time, any fossil fuel infrastructure is going to have to be ripped out of buildings. And so, I'll just repeat what I said again. I think that there's an issue that the community is really confused about what the new building actually is. That yes, there is a geothermal confusion as well, but there's a larger problem, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna move on. You guys have a presentation for us this evening. So,
Does everybody have a copy of the most recent life cycle cost analysis?
No, that wasn't for you.
Put it on the screen. Yeah.
While Carl's setting up, Stucker made a point about people not knowing about this. I find that concerning. This project's been getting a lot of publicity in the paper since the beginning. It's on the website. We've had public sessions going back to last fall, I think is when we started. We had the educational committee that came in here, so I'm not sure what, we have a social media page, so I'm not sure what more we can do to get this out there.
I have a problem with the communication because I think that our presentations were not well attended. Some of the dates were in conflict with activities that were going on in the schools. And I have found that the only way to really communicate with with my town, which is a hill town, is to stand out, give out flyers, give out information, talk to
We've
people
been doing that.
at the transfer station.
We've been doing that.
Yeah, but not all of the hill towns have been doing that.
Yes, I believe they have. We can't.
I don't think that people really get engaged until it comes.
Jan, we can't fault this committee for not trying to get out there.
No, I'm not saying that, but a lot of the media things that go on, the computerized media, Facebook and everything else, there's a population of people who just aren't doing it. And that's part of the problem, so we have to come to them.
Okay.
So Sean, you remember Kevin Cattle from our engineers, Bava?
This is really hard to see, so you're
Yeah.
gonna have to step through the numbers.
Okay, we can increase the size too a bit. But basically, Kevin reviewed the life cycle cost analysis, updated it from the previous version, basically looking at the effect of the rebates and incentives that are out there that help offset the cost, the added cost.
Can you identify those by line? I don't think it's in what's up there.
Is it on the next page? No, oh, okay. Increase the size. I have a laser pointer here. Here. You can use this and you can send here.
So earlier on in December, we did a life cycle cost analysis initially, and it was based on a comparison of geothermal system, a building with an HVAC system having geothermal, and as well as PV. All the cost of the geothermal, the added cost of the PV was all included in that, and it came out to about a difference of $3 million after a 30-year life cycle in favor of a baseline system and not a net zero system. So we've updated this analysis to remove the PV from the analysis because that's a separate item. It's not likely we're going to have all the renewable energy that we need day one when this building comes online. So it's best to look at that as a separate analysis. So we looked at a cost difference that includes the geothermal and some upgraded costs in the building for added insulation, window upgrades to attain a net zero ready building. And that that first cost difference is about $3 million going in. And that's what this is based on. Now, it's important to not look at the overall numbers. These are projected numbers over 30 years. What's important to look at is how the difference is, because that's what really matters. The whole point of this analysis is to determine which one has the lowest total owning and operating costs over a 30-year period. So there's the initial investment of the building itself, the bond, and then annual operating costs like fuel, electricity, and maintenance costs. So over here are the annual operating costs that are basically electricity and maintenance costs. And on the right are the first costs. The cost that's in here is just based on a factor applied to the construction cost. Again, not important to look at how that number was determined. But looking at the difference. So you can see first cost differences. Go to the next page. Slide up. Oh. Right. So first cost differences are roughly for a net zero ready building with incentives. Let me start with no incentives. With no incentives, the difference here is $3 million. Adding in incentives, you have basically one-time credits. The Mass AEC back up. Mass Geothermal credit is a one-time, like $250,000 credit based on a building of this size. That's the cap for that credit. It's unfortunate because it's kind of favors smaller buildings. Once you get into larger buildings, that $250,000 is a smaller fraction of what really needed in order to make up the difference. But so there's a $250,000 difference, and there's also a one-time energy rebate from the utility included in there, and that's roughly equal to $1.50 a square foot. So with those credits taken into account, the net cost difference between the baseline building and a net zero building with incentives is about $2.4 million. So that's that cost you want to make up for in a 30-year life cycle with energy savings. That's basically what you're trying to work against, is to pay that down. Here are the differences in annual operating costs. The baseline building at $181,000. I believe that's estimated on. Well, I think this was used. The basis for this was like 150,000 square foot building. I believe it's 125,000. So again, you know, the numbers are not important. It's the differences that matter. They believe this is like $1.20 a square foot or $1.25 for the base building. I could probably figure that out. The building with no incentives, which is basically a net zero ready building, operating costs of $151,000. Again, this includes both electricity costs and annual maintenance costs. Annual maintenance costs in these is roughly $30,000 a year. It figures like an annual contract with an outside agency to perform that maintenance. And then with incentives, there's a credit of about $12,000 for the Mass AEC credit. That number is not very easy to determine, but it's in that range. Could be more. I don't think it's less or much less. And And so that's in there as a credit to the operating costs every year, out for 10 years, and then that expires. So you can see that there's obviously a favorable operating cost difference here of over $40,000 a year for a building with incentives. And so that's what's going to help pay down that $3 million difference. So does it make it? Here's the total present worth of all the costs run out over 30 years. It includes escalations for inflation, increasing fuel costs, and it includes an assumption of the cost for the bond interest rate, basically payments on the bond, and so running the numbers out, we see that we're at about $50 million, 49.6 for the baseline building, and the baseline build, and then the net zero ready building with no incentives is about $52 million, or 2.4 million higher. If we add the incentives, it brings it down to about a $1.8 million difference. So you can start with, say, that $1.8 million difference and say, well, what if? What if the fuel savings are more? What if the first cost difference is less? And things like that. And you can start to see that, okay, you can probably get it closer, but it's probably not enough to make up for that difference. One thing you can do is to say, in the first cost difference, don't figure in the cost of the added upgrades to the building envelope itself. To a large extent, this building needs to be an efficient building. There's a 2% reimbursement from the state that a baseline building will achieve, as well as the net zero ready building will achieve. That's worth maybe $1 million for this building. So either one will get to that level. The building needs to be very efficient in terms of its windows and walls, and of course HVAC system and lighting. All those components go in order to determine the overall performance of the building. And we need to be at least 20% better than the code. And these buildings will all meet that. So that right off the bat, regardless, is money back to the district. So beyond that, yeah. So you can take $1.5 million, let's say, for the geothermal, make that cost difference 1.5 instead of $3 million. Well, now you're trying to pay down the $1.5 million. Well, we already saw that the difference here with incentives was $1.8 million. At best, it's going to be close to break even when you look at the geothermal cost alone. And $1.5 million may be a little low on that, because we've talked about up to $2 million for that. So it's hard to see how these numbers become much more favorable in terms of the net zero ready building with geothermal.
Okay. Questions?
So when we had talked about this, a month ago or so, the building envelope hadn't necessarily been changed, upgraded, but you had mentioned that
There was some cost built into the study for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 1.8 does include some building envelope upgrades.
Yes, currently, as this does here, it does include that, yes. And upgrades to the building are, they're an analysis on their own, where you can add value of R10 to a wall, You know, we look at the cost-benefit difference there, and it's tough for that to pay back in a short period of time. Improvements in windows, you get more for it in terms of efficiency, but you know, when you're going towards triple glazed windows, the added cost just doesn't really pay off. So, so again, to some degree, the building needs to be efficient, have good insulation, be a tight building, and have decent, at least double glazed windows that perform well. Of course, when you think about a net zero scenario, really the best, or the approach that should be thought of if you're really all in on a net zero approach is you need to do as much as you can for the building efficiency day one. So it does mean spending a little extra cost in order to get to a certain point. It's a bit of a balancing act. But
in the next phase, we'll have a more precise energy model of the building. You know, we'll actually construct a computer model that can test, as Kevin was saying, what does 4 inches of insulation in the wall do for us versus 3.5 inches, and we can fine-tune some of those decisions, both the roof insulation, wall insulation, to see what the payback is, and share that with you and make you know, those decisions at that time, because there is sort of diminishing returns as we found, you know, but we can model that more precisely when we have a full-blown computer model in the next phase.
When we decided to build at the LEED silver level, were there changes then made to the building envelope at that point in time?
No,
that were included
that's the
in the cost?
baseline, John, that we thought of. The LEED silver building and the levels of, you know, the windows and insulation. That's the baseline.
Well,
that
we have to build that stretch code, right? So
Right.
LEED silver is beyond stretch
Beyond
code.
the stretch
So
code.
I think there are some inherent improvements to the building to meet LEED silver.
Well, that's why I mean, when we went
and
from...
we counted on those.
Okay, that was
always.
already accounted for?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Rich?
A couple questions. The LEED silver, we have baseline building here, and then you go to net zero building.
Net zero ready.
Net zero ready. It's not a net zero building.
Right.
So geothermal gives you net zero ready, but not.
It doesn't have all the PVs to get to net
Okay.
zero.
So the other, but I asked you. Thank you for doing that. I asked that last week, because the question I have is the reimbursement for LEED silver. Right, the state reimburses for LEED silver, but nothing above that. So anything above that, they're not going to reimburse for. So we took the solar out and kept the geothermal in this model. What was the investment difference? Is that what you were talking about? The investment difference from 3 million to 1.5 million because we took that solar, that PV out? What's that difference that we're now getting? Are we getting reimbursed for some of the geothermal?
The PV was worth like up to 4 million additional. That got us up to, remember, the range of 7 to 8 million to get to net zero.
Yeah, no.
That's the PV.
So that's
No,
the additional PV.
Remember, you had PV on the roof.
We still do. We have a smaller array. Yes.
Well, that's what I was asking about last week, and I had to leave. Unfortunately, I couldn't.
That's still in any case.
Still in.
Yes.
But that was what I was asking about last week.
But that's a fairly small array. That's like,
How much?
I think we calculated it. It may be about 1/5 of what we need in total.
No, I get that, but if you took that out, because clearly you can't do geothermal after the fact, but you can do solar after the fact. So if you took out that solar array, and to get the LEED silver, you're now using the geothermal to get the LEED silver, what would be I assume we would get some of that money reimbursed by the state, because that helps us get the LEED silver using the geothermal. That was the reason of taking that PV off of the roof of the building. And how much is that PV on the building costing us versus if we put that money towards geothermal and took that PV off the building? Would it reimburse $1 million of it?
No, it's not that much, but that's what's being priced right now, literally as we speak. You know, that's what's on our drawings right now.
Yeah.
The array that's on the gym. it generates somewhere, we think somewhere like about 2.5 maybe percent of the
Yeah, but
electrical
what's the
energy.
value of that
So,
is the question, if we
yeah.
strip it out.
I think we're talking hundreds of thousands, not millions, you know, in terms of order of magnitude.
Yeah. So it would be a couple $100,000 maybe, you know, that we could get reimbursed on the geothermal, getting us to lead silver versus the PV.
Yeah, I mean, LEED Silver, as you remember, is made up of a lot of different
Yeah.
categories.
Yeah, sure.
There are other categories,
But you're-
lighting efficiency and water efficiency, and
But you are using that PV to get to lead silver.
that's
correct?
one point.
Right.
I mean, literally, it's only
No, I get that.
It's only 1 point
No, I
out of
get that.
50.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
for
mean
sure.
that you get
Yeah.
LEED silver all of a sudden.
Yeah.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's an investment that we're making, and the
Yeah.
state is reimbursing that, their portion of that to get it. And that's why I was just saying, if we took that off and used that money to invest, to bring the cost of geothermal down lower, that would be, some portion of it would be reimbursable, is what I was trying to make the argument. That's all. And
I think
that
that's
train
fair.
probably left the station anyway, but unfortunately. The other question I have is in your baseline energy consumption, is air conditioning figured into that if they have to run?
Yes.
It's figured in there? And is that, like, on the geothermal side, it's not figured in because you gotta get that?
Yes, it is.
It is, okay.
Eight geothermal is an all air conditioned building.
Yeah,
It's what makes it feasible.
yeah. Okay.
What helps make it feasible.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Callahan's going to make a motion.
I move that the school building committee abandon the ground sourced heat pump system and revert back to the baseline design for heating, venting, and air conditioning.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the reversal in our original decision on December 13th. Is there any discussion on that? Mr. Bartels?
I have another question, because I don't know that is it
We're
okay?
not- Yeah, go ahead.
We've been talking about return on investment on this over a period of time. Has that been figured out at all?
That's what this is.
Well, that's what I mean. Over how many years you're talking about now?
30.
30. Okay. That's what I wanted to get straight.
You're looking for, you're looking for which system gives you the least cost over 30 years.
I have a question on, have you calculated an increase in the cost of gas? And if there is a carbon tax put on, have you calculated any of those projections?
No. You have the escalation. There's escalation, yeah.
What's the percentage of escalation?
4.5% a year. Yeah. Which may be a little generous. But,
But on this system, if you just have the boiler system, you have no air conditioning, right?
You will have air conditioning.
How will we have air, how do we have air conditioning?
With a
if
chiller.
it's put onto the boiler?
There are separate systems that serve, in different ways. That serve
Okay,
their own
and
different
what
ways.
does that cost?
That's in the baseline building.
Okay. What is the cost of the boiler system and that added cooling system? What is that line item? Because, I don't know if it's been taken out when
There hasn't been a hard cost estimate yet for that type of thing, but it's for air conditioning. It's somewhere around $5 to $10 a square foot. Closer to 5.
Which would be $100 or $600,000.
And what is just a ballpark on the boiler, the heating part of it? Do we have
Well,
any idea? On the square footage or?
That's a hard one to pinpoint.
Because
Several $100,000 for the
I mean,
boilers.
these
I mean,
numbers,
it's
remember,
just a
are in the
component-
baseline building.
Yeah, it's a component that needs to be part of the building.
And the 1.5 million that we talked about is over and above that. Is recognizing, deleting those and adding
it is,
the heater,
okay.
chiller. Yes.
All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, we figured that in.
All right, I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure.
Just to be clear, I thought that's where you were going.
Yeah, thank you.
The chiller and the boiler we just talked about goes away, and then you replace that with another component. That's
Pumps
a heat
and-
pump type
yeah.
component.
So but the air conditioning
in the baseline building is in part of the building? Or is it now in the whole building?
The classrooms mainly, and auditorium,
Yeah, library.
library, places like that,
Mhm.
for the most part. For the most part, it's all there.
The extent of air conditioning really is different. Remember, the difference that we talked about is that you might call it kind of a fine tuning, but difference between a 2-pipe system and a 4-pipe system. In the base building, you can do air conditioning or you can do heating, but you can't do them simultaneously. So at some point on the calendar, you switch over. Whereas with the heat pump system, you have 4 pipes. You can do heating in part of the building and cooling in another part of the building at the same time. So there's a little bit of functionality difference there. But in terms of the extent of air conditioning, it's an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, and the only reason why you do that with the 4-pipe is to allow for heat recovery in the building. So if you have warm spaces, that can help feed back into the building to heat spaces that need heat, and vice versa.
Sort of like that open hallway that I walked down, where they got the windows open, but we've got the heat on.
Yes.
On behalf of the school building committee, I'd like to make a few things clear if I can. One is, we do not have anything against geothermal systems. I think that there's a perception out there that we're against it. That is wrong. Ideally, if we could afford all of this, we would buy everything. We can't buy everything. This is a case of being able to buy almost anything. We can't get it all. I believe that the take that some of us have on how the 7 towns see this is valid. And I'm inclined to back up some of the select people in the different towns that say that this will be a hardship on people without geothermal. I'm not willing to take a chance and lose this project over one issue. Geothermal is a good thing. It is not prevalent yet. Personally, I am not convinced all the data given to us is valid enough to sway me over there. Everyone says we're doing the best for our kids. I think it's time we stop debating over this issue and see to it that we get a school passed. If we're as committed as we all say and think, it's pretty obvious we could debate this issue ad infinitum. We should get over this as soon as possible and get this design across to the people better than we're doing. Admit that we may have been late in going with the geothermal, but we gave the geothermal thing a real good shot. And it doesn't look like it's going to be taken very well by the towns. I'm not even sure we're going to get the basic design passed. But I think it's time we just got down to putting before the voters the basic design, which seems to have reasonable support at this time. Thank you.
I guess the thing, we went through all this data in the last meeting when we actually voted for the geothermal. It made huge sense. The part that makes me uncomfortable is that when you look at the mix of the impact on how it's going to hit each town financially, the average tax bill, I've got a real easy time at selling it in Beckett because we're at $81 and it's an additional $5 to go geothermal. Other towns are not in that same position. And my feeling right from the get-go is I think it makes huge sense to go geothermal if we can. If geothermal gives us a risk that the entire project would be turned down, it would be a disaster. And it would be disaster because we would lose the new school and we'd be looking down the barrel of fixing some required pieces at Wacona that we would have to do on our own. And that bill could come pretty close to what a new school would be. So you know, I've listened to this and much of what we're getting is anecdotal. We just don't know, but I'm just getting a gut feel that the geothermal is adding salt to the wound of an aging population that might be willing to do this, but not go that extra distance. And that's kind of where I am.
Okay, John.
I have to agree with what you're saying. In each town, it's either easier in one, harder in another, no doubt. And in Dalton, it's not that easy. And rightfully so, because most of our kids are in this school, or will be in this school. So the lion's share of the cost of the school is going to go to Dalton, and that's only fair. But when we're talking of an added tax increase, well, I figured out low at 350. I've heard 500, and then plus another 35 for the geothermal. Okay, that alone is hard, but there are the other things that we're going to be paying for in coming years for our town, which don't have anything to do with the school. We've got the old high school right now. That's going to hit the tax rolls next year. And that's $1.3 million just to Dalton. We have road construction, where we have bonds that we're going to have to start paying for next year for engineering. There's close to $1 million there. So we have these costs, and other towns have costs too. But these are extraordinary costs that not only are we going to have to burden our taxpayers with, but now we have to convince them of the new school. My goal, I really want to see the school. I don't want it jeopardized by adding more to it. And that's where I see where we're going. Our select board, to Mr. Boyle's point, our members have various concerns. We haven't made a decision as for endorsing or not endorsing, and we won't until we have the figures so that we can make a better educated decision. But that will happen. And I think it's just going to be harder with the addition of the geothermal system. So that's kind of where we are. Plus, there's dynamics in the town with those homes that are housing cost burdened. They're increasing every year. Poverty, that's been thrown around quite a bit. It's increasing in our town. Our median income is the lowest of the 6 towns in Berkshire County. So that's kind of telling as well. These are our issues. Other towns are different. But these are our issues that we're looking at. And 2/3 of the school, we're going to have to pay for. So well, that's where we're at.
John?
Yes.
Excuse me, did you mean the 6 lowest in Berkshire County or the district?
Of the district towns in Berkshire County, we're the lowest of the 6 towns. I don't know what Cummington's is. I don't know what your median income is. So,
thanks.
Yep.
Mike.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for their comments tonight. And having listened to them, having been a part of these meetings so far, one thought keeps coming back to me, and it's this. It's that we have a real opportunity here for a new high school. And the prevailing sentiment seems to be that that's generally a good idea and people will get behind that. And then over the last 30 days or so, this geothermal issue has arisen, and the one thought that keeps coming back to me is that to scrap this entire project would be, as they say, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I would have a very difficult time explaining to any of the children who might be coming into this high school 3 or 4 years from now and saying to them, we had an opportunity to build a new school, state-of-the-art school, encompassing state-of-the-art environmentally friendly technology. But you don't have that school because of this issue that arose that is a genuine issue, and as Mr. Callahan pointed out, one that we could argue ad infinitum. But to make the suggestion that we scrap the project itself because of an additional expense that we're talking about, that I won't delve too far into the numbers, but I would have a very difficult time having that conversation and trying to explain to those kids how we came to that conclusion. So that's all I'd say. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just want to say something. You know, this type of energy, clean energy that we're going to scrap, I have a hard time scrapping it, because how do we explain to our grandchildren that the earth is polluted and that we didn't go with a green energy that's going to, is a 21st century energy, not a 20th century energy, which we're using gas, which is very polluting. I think we're sending the wrong message to our communities and to the next generation that's coming up, that's going to be in the school. I think that this energy is going to be a much more efficient and less costly over the course of 50 years. And I think that we're going to have taxes that are going to be placed on polluting energies like oil and gas. It's the only way that we're going to cut down on the pollution that we emit to our planet. It's a green source. It's hard for me to even consider a 20th century heating system. That the only thing that can happen is the price can go up to maintain it, to give it what it needs, which is gas. I'm having a hard time with that. And I think we can sell it to the communities.
Keep it real simple. I certainly support the environmental concerns. I think they're real. I think the primary goal is the school. I've heard comments around town, as John and others have. I'm not willing to gamble the school for the sake of geothermal. I think the primary goal is the school. I personally don't want to take any chance of that being voted down the first time. I know we can do the second vote, but that gets all sorts of complications. I'm afraid that the best thing for us to do is to go with the original plan without the geothermal. I don't think it's worth the gamble, in my opinion.
As a student rep, I just want to say that I'm very scared about my future and what it will look like if we continue burning fossil fuels on this planet. And I'm scared of what will happen if we don't start making changes in the way we live our lives. Now, obviously, I probably know one of the best, I probably have one of the best knowledges about why we need a new school, but I find it hard to support a school that enforces these practices that are no longer, they're not modern and they're not helping our planet. I think obviously we need to think about our children's educational futures, but we also need to think about the world in which our children will have to live in after they're educated, if we continue to burn fossil fuels. Now, I don't want to risk the project, but I'm just feeling very confused right now. And I just want to state my opinion.
Good. Well stated.
So, I don't know if I should put myself out here this way, but I'm in Dalton, and our family, my husband and I, the taxes that are going to happen are going to possibly impact us 4 times the average household property that we have. You didn't want to gamble, and a lot of people here seem like they don't want to gamble the school, but this is so important to me. The environment is so important to me that I feel like I don't want to gamble our environment. And I voted for it, even knowing that you're going to have huge tax increase. I think that was it.
Just a couple quick things. I'm definitely for environmentally sound practices, However, if we risk it and lose this project, keep in mind that we're going to be stuck in this old building and we're going to be very inefficient for years to come. So that's where I'm at with that.
Rich?
One last comment I'll make is we lost the message on this. And I don't know how, I mean, I was involved all along and I cannot remember where the discussion went for the utilities in the building with respect to furnaces, boilers, that sort of thing. And I would say as a learning, as a learning point here for you guys and other committees down the road, is that if this was the original design, we wouldn't be having this discussion. And unfortunately, like I said, we lost the message on this. The paper, everything else, and perception is reality. And now we're all sitting here saying we don't want to risk the school for geothermal versus gas. It's a silly argument, but unfortunately, the reality is we lost the message. And that really angers me, and I think for the future, I think that's something that, you know, this process needs to be looked at with respect to that. Unfortunately, it's too late for us, but I just want to point that out, that I think for you guys, because you're doing these with other schools, don't make that mistake with other schools. Make sure it's in right from the start. Start at the top and work your way back down. Unfortunately, it is what it is now. I also don't want to risk a school, but it just is unfortunate.
Anyone else? All right, I'll add something in. Obviously, I'm about the environment. Take a look at my house. I have 10 watt solar panels on the outside. I've got solar hot water. I truthfully looked at geothermal about 10 years ago and said it cost too much. For the payback, to me, the PVs were there, the payback for the solar hot water was there. But again, geothermal was not when I looked at it. I did the research when we had the net zero question, which was going to could cost up to $7 to $8 million. And I concluded, you know, after looking at many different projects, at least in the northeastern part of the country, that it was either something that would go in for private industry, it was something that would go in for affluent neighborhoods, or for schools like Hope down in North Carolina. They had a big base. I mean, we're talking that they built one school that was net zero, and but it was a 6,000 student school district, so they could easily spread that cost. We're not in that situation. I've got to think of this like I think of myself. I couldn't afford something. I've got to believe that most of the people in this community can't afford it too. So it's the biggest thing is it's unfortunate that this whole school project has come down to geothermal. I think that's sad, to be honest. It's very sad, either from the perspective of being able to afford it or being able to do it or not do it. The school ought to be about what the students need, and I really like what Anna said, and I agree with her. But I wish we could afford it. And I think she'll find out as she gets out into the world that, you know, it's not always that easy. It's often about what comes out of your pocket. So, and again, I want to make a note that she did win the MLK essay. So there you go from our district. I didn't let you get off that easy. So congratulations. But you know, that's really all I have to say. I mean, I was for this in the beginning, and then you begin to see the outpouring of people that say that I can't afford this, and this is gonna push it over the edge. Again, it's really unfortunate that it pushes it over the edge, but if it does, it does. And I'd rather see this building built because, you know, we talked about the fact that we're dealing with a $1.3 million expense in Dalton. I don't live in Dalton, for the old high school. What's going to happen if this school isn't built is that you're going to have this building costing this town that expense, okay? And where do you think the students are going to go? If we don't have a high school, we've got to find another place to go. That's what happens if this building fails, if we don't take this action now. So what's more important? Do you want to keep the Warriors here in Dalton, or do you want to go elsewhere? You want to keep this building here that's going to add to the value of this community, or do you want it to go elsewhere? That's the decision you're making at the end of the day. So that's all I have to say. Anyone else? No more from the audience, sorry. All right, we're going to do a roll call vote. So if you could announce the names and just leave me.
Read the
last.
motion. Could you read it again, Tom?
Oh, sure, sorry.
I move that the school building committee abandon the ground-sourced heat pump system and revert back to the baseline design for heating, venting, and air conditioning.
Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Does someone have to second that, or?
No, we've already had a motion
Okay.
second.
All right. Sean Armstrong,
I'm abstaining for now.
Tom Talion,
I vote for the motion.
John Bartelis,
For the motion?
Wendy Brown,
No.
okay, Gary Campbell,
For the motion.
Mike Case,
For.
Wayne Cornell,
For.
Mike Daniels,
For.
Jason Dion,
For.
Bonnie DiTomaso,
For.
Anna Duquette,
Against.
Todd Emerson,
For.
Andrew Garcia,
For the motion.
Mike Hinckley,
Against.
Carrie Mason,
For.
John McConish,
For the motion.
Bill Mulholland,
For the motion.
Jan Paxton,
Against.
Rich Peters,
Against.
Aaron Robb,
For.
Sean Therian,
For.
Melinda Walton,
For.
Melissa Pekowski,
Abstain.
Lori Kasna,
Abstain.
I don't think you have. Yeah, go ahead.
So 16 voted in favor of the motion, and 5 against, and 3 abstentions.
Okay, so the motion passes. That's where we are. All right, motion to adjourn. All in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.